Welcome back, welcome back. Aged just 17, Peter Gabriel was a founder member of Genesis, one of the most influential rock bands of all time. But after just 8 years, and to the dismay of millions of fans around the world, Peter left Genesis and launched his own solo career. Since then, he's released over a dozen albums, won innumerable awards, and he's cemented his reputation as one of the greats of rock in the process. He's just released a new album, New Blood, an orchestral adaptation of some of his own work. But before we meet him, let's see him in action.
I can't watch anymore. No more denial. It's so hard to lay down in all of this red rain coming down. Red rain.
And that's it. The man himself in action. And how would you describe what it is you've done to that song, to Red Rain, to produce it in that form?
Well, we've thrown a lot of other instruments on it. You know, we wanted to do an orchestral record, and some of my stuff. It's the second project with orchestra that we've done. So some of it's pretty stark and empty, and some of it's quite full. But it's amazing when I'm used to working with technology and a band to lose all of that and just have a lot of great players playing live around me.
And New Blood is the name of this part of your life.
Well, yeah, I think it's new blood for me, because even though it's a very old-fashioned look in the sense of working with these traditional orchestra and players, New Blood, it's new experience for me, and also the songs, which span maybe 30 years, are also getting an injection of new blood.
And the lyrics don't have a particular injection of new blood as much as the music, do they?
No, they're just the same as they always were.
Yeah. You didn't get tempted to add on a quick verse?
No, there's a couple of lines you think, well, that could be better, but...
but you stuck to it.
Yeah.
And what was it that took you back to the past to get this inspiration?
Well, it's a fell out of the back of a previous project, which was a songwriter exchange. So if you do one of my songs, I'll do one of yours. Yeah. And that we decided to try with orchestra. And then we needed some more material. So I just started working with this wonderful arranger, John Metcalf, on my stuff, and got to like that. So now it's a record. Right.
And we, well, how many more songs have you got that you could do this with?
Well, there's quite a lot of them.
Yeah,
I've been doing it for a while. I've got no idea. I mean, I've really gone for an interesting life rather than a full career, so probably less than some other artists. But there's quite a lot of other stuff there.
Yeah. And which was the song that was most, where you thought, my God, I could have written that today?
Well, in a way, the song about Stephen Biko in South Africa, when you see the Arab awakening going on, is in a sense, you know, a young person willing to risk their lives to stand up for what they believe in. Maybe that seems relevant all over again.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So that Steve Biko incident, period, tragedy in South Africa was a very, very potent one on their road to freedom, with not having reached it yet, of course.
Yeah.
But why did you leave Genesis after 8 years, in fact? After a mere 8 years?
Mere 8 years. Well, I think there were a number of reasons. Just had my first child, and that the birth all went wrong, and there wasn't a lot of sort of room and empathy for that in the band, because we were making a record at the time. And I think I didn't like the feeling of being a part of a machine in the music business, because you sort of knew what you were doing 2 years ahead. And I wanted to just get out of the music business for a while. It wasn't sort of initially to do a solo career, but I didn't find anything else that I could do very much so.
Yeah. And as every devoted fan of Genesis all around the world, and of you obviously, always ask, could there be a reunion concert, reunion tour?
Well,
reunion?
there was a discussion, and in fact, we put on this first festival to really feature music and culture from around the world, which is called WOMAD, and that's now gone out around the world, but that lost a lot of money, and we actually did a reunion concert to pay off the debts for that, which has allowed us a 30-year lifespan for that organization. And we did talk about it last year, but it became a little bigger than I wanted to undertake.
And how bigger? You wanted to do it on a small scale?
Well, I think,
small halls, or
well, no, not
or Wembley Stadium.
No,
or?
I think it was just the time period. And I was working on this project, and it just seemed like it was growing into something that I didn't feel ready to take on.
Yeah, but you might still do it.
It's not impossible. Yeah, we don't we don't hit each other when we meet, and
hopefully it won't be because you've lost lots of money, like the last time you did the one-off concert.
Exactly. Yeah, we hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your ambitions now, Peter?
Well, I'm very interested in stuff I do outside of music. So there's an organisation we got going called the Elders.org, which is former world statesmen, which Mandela founded. They are doing incredible work. There's a human rights group called Witness.org, which is basically trying to apply technology and video to human rights campaigning. And there's another thing we're trying to get going, which is like an app store for things that are do good, maybe world-changing apps, and so some of that stuff I find really interesting, and I love new technology. My father was electrical engineer, inventor, so I have some interest in new toys and new technology, and I love all that.
And when you're working on the technology and so on, and going with your music and so on, as the best possible person to decide, do you find that your voice has changed in your ears now as to what it was years ago?
Well, I think
back in 1987 or whenever.
I think age tends to suck everything towards the earth, and you, including your voice. So you lose maybe a tone up top. But I think there are people, I love people like Leonard Cohen and Dylan, who, as they've got older, have done new things with their deeper voices, and you gain a little closer to the ground, and you lose a little heavenward notes.
Heavenward notes, higher notes.
Higher notes.
Heavenward notes. And do you see a difference in what you wrote for Genesis and what you wrote since? I mean, is there an actual clear difference or not?
I think so. I think it. We were part of a movement called prog, which was much reviled, right. But with Genesis, but we were trying to explore different forms, and in a way, some of that I still do, but I think it's in a very different style.
Yeah.
But it's in the ear of the beholder, like most things.
Do you still? You've done so much. You've written so many songs and so on, and now you've got a new approach to your songs and so on. Do you have clear-cut ambitions still to fulfill?
I think really just to follow. Joseph Campbell said this thing about following your bliss, and I think that'll provide an interesting life, and so far it's led me to a lot of interesting places and people and experiences. So I'm happy to continue on that course.
And do you still enjoy performing as much as you ever did? The thrill of an audience and all of that, does it give you a high or a buzz or?
Yeah, no, I think, anyone who's a performer, at a base level enjoys showing off in one form or another. On the other hand, when I'm away on holiday, I'm pining for a piano, it's not a stage. So I think I'm a songwriter first.
Songwriter first?
Yeah.
And, well, I hope it continues for ages.
Thank you.
I hope to get a little anonymous note through the post if you're doing a new concert.
All right.
Everybody will want to go to that if
Great.
you do it.
Okay.
And good luck with everything you're doing, Peter.
Thank you very much.
This week has seen a series of deadly attacks in the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, killing scores of civilians. So what will happen if, as planned, the remaining 43,000 US troops leave by the end of the year? Will Iraq fall into further violent chaos? I'm joined now by Osama al-Nujaifi. He's the Speaker of the Iraqi Parliament. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much indeed for being with us. We're delighted you're here. With the recent attacks, violent attacks in your country, is there a danger that violence will rise again to the level of 2006 and 2007?
What is happening today is a continued attempt to escalate sectarian strife and to come to a flashpoint where there will be an all-out conflict between the Sunnis and the Shias, and to bring the country into a vicious cycle of violence. This is something that has extremely dangerous ramifications and implications if it were to happen.
So that at the moment, are you optimistic or pessimistic about peace within Iraq?
We are at a junction. It is extremely possible that we could succeed in controlling the situation in Iraq after the withdrawal of US forces, on the condition that the political partners agree to abide by all the terms and conditions that we came and agreed upon. However, we also have the possibility that the country could descend into a state of violence if we fail to abide by the terms of a true political partnership.
A true political partnership. And in the situation now, do you think some American forces will need to stay after the end of the year? Or do you think it will be good for Iraq that they leave?
Iraq is totally incapable of filling the vacuum that will be left by the departure of the US forces. However, we have decided that the US forces are to leave, and we have to be fully prepared to face the challenges of the post-departure era. What will be left will be personnel who will carry out the training of Iraqi armed forces.
What is the answer to the missing $18 billion that has disappeared, as it were, from Iraq's ownership? What has happened to it? Do you know where it is? I don't have it.
The American side has to shoulder much of the responsibility in regards with the loss of many billions since the time when Paul Bremer was the governor in Iraq. And since then, many more billions have been lost. There is an investigation in Iraq. There is an investigation in America regarding the loss of $17.5 or $18 billion from the chest of Iraq's development fund. The investigation goes on, but we think that there is unfortunately some underhand play by many American officials who do not wish for the whole truth to come out, alongside some Iraqi officials and Iraqi partners in crime.
And what about the other issue, reaching a deal with the Americans over the issue of the protection of any US soldier who stays in Iraq after the beginning of the new year? Can they be protected in some way?
No, we have decided in Parliament, all political parties refuse to afford the remaining American personnel immunity. Even those that remain to train the Iraqi military forces on how to use American weapons, they will remain without immunity. What they will have is normal judicial immunity in case they are attacked or the such, but there is a consensus amongst political parties that they will not carry on enjoying absolute immunity.
And in terms of your very important part of the world. What do you feel should be the next move of President Assad of Syria? Should he resign, leave the country because of what he has done since the Arab Spring? Do you think what he has done is inexcusable?
I don't think that there is any justification for the practices of the Syrian regime, as he has used disproportionate violence against a defenseless nation that aspired to democracy and freedom. I think he has gone too far. President Assad, as well as those around him, his advisors and the entire regime, have treated their own people as enemies rather than as citizens who want a peaceful move towards political reform. And I personally think that he has gone beyond the point of no return. And I personally think that Syria will come to see a new era and a new age in which democracy and freedom and justice will prevail.
Well, we hope that peace will come in Syria, but also, of course, we hope that these recent attacks come to an end in Iraq, and we hope that an era of peace is therefore dawning in Iraq as well. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sir David Frost.
We return now to European affairs, and in particular the crisis surrounding the euro. Leaders of the 17 Eurozone countries, headed by Germany and France, have given themselves until October the 23rd to agree a deal to tackle the debt crisis, or the latest deal to tackle the debt crisis. Whatever that deal is, it will of course affect all European countries in and out of the Eurozone, including the Czech Republic, which may be thanking its lucky stars it is outside the Eurozone. Its Foreign Minister, Karel Scwarenbergh, is with me right now. Welcome, very good to have you with us.
Glad to see you.
Tell me, are you thanking your lucky stars that you are not in the Eurozone?
For the moment, I think it's a better solution for our country. But of course, we are obliged one day, due to the accession treaty to the European Union, to accept one day the euro. But for the moment, we don't fulfill the conditions, and presumably we won't be able for several years.
Yeah. So you said 2015 or some...
Maybe 2015, but that was a presumption before the economic crisis. Now, of course, it maybe needs a longer time.
And is the Eurozone in danger at the moment of falling apart?
I don't think they will fall apart, but they will have a very, very difficult time indeed. And of course, there's a problem of Greece. How they manage it, only by a cut of all their debt of 50% or something, they can survive as a Eurozone country. But of course, still there will be a problem for an economy like Greece to be competitive, still having the euro.
And will Greece have to default, do you think, in the course of this year?
I'm not an economist, but there are some indicators showing that it will be possible.
Yes, some indicators and so on. What do France and Germany have set this target date of having a bailout system, a better system, in keeping by the October the 23rd. What do they have to do to improve the situation? And can they do it, the two of them? Can the two of them agree?
Well, I do think they're near to an agreement between the two. If they can solve the situation, I'm not so sure. I'm not a prophet.
You're not a prophet. You're not a prophet, and you're not an economist. But
No,
you are an
you're
expert on all matters European.
Limited.
As we look ahead, do you think that this crisis will go on and on in Europe? Do you think there's no sign of an end to it? Or do you think it has a finite period when it will come to an end?
Everything one day has come to an end. But the economic crisis will be longer than many people think. It's evident. you shouldn't forget that the last similar economic crisis, which started in 1929, existed throughout in Europe and in America till World War II. Only when Hitler started his rearmament policy with inflation, which was covered by Hjalmar Schacht, I mean, suddenly the unemployment in Germany disappeared. Nobody understood that it is a fake recovery.
And the finance minister, the Czech finance minister, Miroslav Kalousek, said this, quote, "From the point of view of competitiveness of the European economic space, this idea to tax financial transactions, separately again, is the very worst idea possible." Is it?
I don't know, it's the very worst, but it's a bad idea. But because, of course, it chases as important financial institutions with their transactions to other places, maybe it will be New York or Hong Kong or Winnipeg or Buenos Aires, I don't know. And that is one thing. Second, they always try to explain us that it is a punishment for the banks or financial institutions. But the banks and financial institutions will, of course, burden their customers to cover the expenses. So I think it's a thing that, to achieve a slower recovery.
Right. And we've heard the news in the last week or so, a bit more than weeks now, that the Russian Prime Minister, as he now is, and the Russian President, as he will soon be again, Vladimir Putin, is on his way back into power as President. Will that affect in any way your relationship with Russia?
I hope it will not, because, let's be honest, Putin was the whole time in power.
And so, as we look at the future of Europe now, are you filled with optimism, pessimism, gloom, ecstasy?
Ecstasy? It's a drug, as you well know.
Yeah.
Ecstasy is a drug. Well, I think will have very difficult times in the next year before us. Very difficult times. And we have to prepare for this.
And we had this optimism about the coming of the EU and everything like that, and it's not turned out as well as possible. Who do you blame for the fact that so far the European Union has not worked the way it was supposed to work? Who's to blame?
The politicians in the European Union, all our national politicians too, because we didn't dare through the whole time tell our voters the simple truth that we are living on debt. And each year, the debt of each single nation was rising. And nobody dared to say, my dear, we can't afford it. We have to reduce our living standards. We have to put our budget in order. Nobody dared to tell it to their connationals. And therefore, they have to be blamed.
Thank you so much for being with us.
It was a pleasure.
We appreciate it. Well, our thanks there to Karel Scwarenbergh, and that's all I'm afraid we've got time for this week. So do join us again in 7 days' time for another packed edition of Frost Over the World.